Welcome to my new 2028 video, so let's start. Diving in, Kentucky Governor Andy Beshear would be able to do better than most Democrats in Kentucky, but the issue for him is the fact that it's a Trump 30+ state. I do believe he would be able to do quite well in his home state of Kentucky, but at the end of the day, the state is just way too red and it would still be safe R. Also, Florida, I think even with Andy Beshear, would do quite well with whites. Florida would still be safe R by a big margin for JD Vance. And now to move on to the likely states, Texas and Alaska, both these states were safe R for Trump in 2024, but Andy Beshear would be able to do quite well and get both of these safe R states down from the safe margin, but still 10 to 12% wins for VP JD Vance. And then we can move on to Iowa and the first district of Nebraska. Both of these would be very good victories for the GOP, but still I think Andy Beshear would cut alongside the margins of the GOP, especially with whites and college graduates, and I think both of these would just narrowly drop down below 12%. Anyway, we can move on to another Rust Belt area of the country for Ohio, the home state of Vance, of course, and now he's VP. The issue for Vance is that Andy Beshear would be able to really cut down and gain inside some of the areas closer to the Appalachia region. In the south of Ohio, I think Vance would not be able to gain as much of the home state advantage, but still, there's no way that this state goes for the Democrats, and it goes to Vance by 9 to 11%. While in Maine, we can just say that the Maine 2nd district, I think, would be 7 to 9% victory for Vance. Andy Beshear, even though he doesn't have the most high name recognition, could be able to cut down alongside a lot of white voters. I think that's really his main appeal in 2028. While, yeah, so 8% victory for Vance there. Now we can move on to New Jersey, actually. I think Andy Beshear alongside Josh Shapiro are probably the better candidates for a state like New Jersey. I think New Jersey, even though it barely won by a likely margin, I feel like Andy Beshear could be able to do quite well with a lot of those Democrats that voted for Biden 2020 or Trump in 2024, and Beshear would win here by 7 to 9%, which, if not more, to be honest, I could see that happen. And now for a state that is really close to Kentucky, Andy Beshear, I think, could be one of the best Democrats for Virginia. For someone that isn't from Virginia, I think Virginia would go for the Democrats in this scenario by at least 6 to 8%. Could even go as high as 9, but I'm gonna go with a margin of just 7% on the dot. And now back to Maine at large. Just like I said, for the 2nd district, I think he's able to cut down some of the margins alongside white people, and you could say that he does way better than Kamala Harris in 2024, and he wins here by 6 to 8%. Could even be more than that, but I'm being just a bit conservative because he doesn't have the best name recognition. And now we can move on to, let's go to New Mexico. I feel like no matter what, in 2028, Democrats are still going to lose some of the Hispanic vote. I think the Hispanic vote is just going to trend more and more to the right, with Beshear's not as bad, but still I think New Mexico would go for Andy Beshear by 5 to 7% in 2028, so it's not terrible, but still, yeah, likely the New Mexico still. And now New Hampshire. I feel like Andy Beshear, being from a red state, would really benefit in a state like New Hampshire that only went to Harris by 2.8%. I feel like he can make a case that he's very bipartisan and that could really appeal to some of those red states, or maybe like more fiscally diverse states like New Hampshire, and that's why I would have this as likely D by, I'm gonna say 5 to 7%. Basically a very good improvement from 2024 by over 3% at least. And back to the Rust Belt. So for the 2nd district of Nebraska, the main issue for Andy Beshear really in the Rust Belt is his charisma. I think that's where I could see Andy Beshear not really gain in 2028. And that could be the reason why Vance defeats Andy Beshear in 4 years' time, which I believe that I think he's able to do. Almost any Democrat is able to improve from Harris' margin of 4.7%. I could even see, even AOC probably would actually do, funnily enough. But yeah, Beshear would win the 2nd district by 5 to 7%. And yeah, I think that's it for the likely states. Now, we can move on to the lean states. As you can see, it's very close right now, but for the first one, in Minnesota, Harris was able to really do pretty amazing in Minnesota with how bad she did nationwide. As you can see, even New Hampshire voted to the right of Minnesota, which tells you how much of appeal, and Tim Walz was able to get a lot of home state advantage for the Harris-Walz ticket 2024, and I don't see it. Even Andy Beshear, I think the state would be one of the few states that really swing to the right. I don't think it goes to Vance, but Andy Beshear would win the state of Minnesota by, I think, 2 to 4%, just barely to the right of 2024. And now for a state close to the border, for Arizona, I feel like having a nominee like Andy Beshear from a deep red state could really appeal to some of those McCain Republicans, but it does seem like Arizona going to Biden in 2020 was a one-off thing, and I don't think that even with someone like Andy Beshear, it would flip in 2028. So I think, yeah, Beshear does quite well in Arizona, but still, it's not enough, and Vance would win here by 1 to 3%. For a state that I could see Andy Beshear really doing good is really in Georgia. I feel like Georgia would be one of the states that is very much close to Kentucky. I think Beshear would be able to do quite well in appeal to the Rust Belt, but I think he would do even better in the Sun Belt, in a state of Georgia that is trending to the left easily. National Environment 2024 was R+6, still barely went to Trump by +2. Any national environment that is really closer to that would mean a victory for Democrats here, and I feel like Andy Beshear would not only be able to get some decent turnout from black voters, I think he'd probably pick someone like Warnock or something like that, and I think most importantly, Beshear could be able to cut down in some of those high white majority counties, maybe even some rural areas, and that's why, I know there's a bit of a hot take, but I think he's probably the only candidate alongside maybe Warnock that actually makes Georgia go into the lean deep category barely. I think Andy Beshear would barely be able to win Georgia by a lean margin of 0.75% to 2.75%, so maybe it could drop down to tilt, but I'm gonna bet it's an easy victory for the Democrats here. To the next state, similar fashion, North Carolina. I feel like with Andy Beshear, he could do quite well in some of these areas, but still, I think it's not going to be good enough. And funnily enough, I see this being basically the opposite of Georgia. And it still goes to Vance, but it goes to him narrowly by 0.75% to 2.75% just because the state is just too red. And I don't see it flipping unless there's like a economic depression or something of that magnitude in 2028 in the Trump presidency. And as some of you might have seen in the community post, a state that really is gaining a lot of Republican voters in the last month is actually Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania, by far, one of the states that the GOP is really looking good long term. Due to the rural counties, the Amish vote, Democrats not getting over 80% in Philadelphia, that's really why the state is not as blue and might even be trending to the right. Some Republicans are even saying that it's going to be Ohio 2.0. We will see about that. That's just way too early. But out of all these Rust Belt states, Vance, being from the nearby state, Ohio, would have a decent shot of not only winning this state in 2028, but I could even see it maybe narrowly going a bit to the right of 2024 easily. And I believe JD Vance would actually win here by 0.75% to 2.75%. In 2028, so a huge victory for the Vance and GOP ticket in 2028. But still, there's more states to go. We can move on to Nevada, a state that almost went to the right of North Carolina. The issue for the Democrats is the Latino vote by miles. I think, like I said, for New Mexico, Beshear is probably one of the better candidates that won't make Hispanics trend really much to the right, unlike someone like Kamala Harris in 2028 or a progressive. I think even though it's going to be very hard for Beshear to win in the primary, someone that is center-left like Andy Beshear would be able to really do good in Nevada. He could maybe even win Nevada by a lean margin. I wouldn't be surprised by that. Beshear wins Nevada by 0.75%, very close, but still, I think he flips this R+3 Trump state in 2028. And now, for the last two states, Wisconsin and Michigan, the main issue for Andy Beshear in 2028 is the fact that he doesn't have high name recognition. I would say he actually has low name recognition. He's not charismatic. As we saw, he really tried too hard to be Kamala's VP pick, and look how that turned out. He's also from a deep red state, so I think he maybe gets some backlash from Democrats calling him a dino. And it all depends on how well Trump does and how much approved he is, and if people basically want a third Trump term. But I'm gonna say that Michigan and Wisconsin barely go in 2028 for the GOP, and I doubt that inclination from these 3 states would break in 2028 to still Michigan and Wisconsin barely go to Vance by a really close margin of 0.5%. As you can see, VP JD Vance wins with 290 electoral votes while Governor Andy Beshear gets 248 electoral votes. Let me know what your map looks like. As always, feel free to leave a like, join the Discord and the channel membership, and have a good rest of your day.